Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. I'm Randy Wright, and I'm joined on tonight's election special edition by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while Jeremy and I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before we may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, here it is. We are at the election point. People have headed to the ballot box to cast their ultimate determination as to whom they believe is best qualified to be the next president of these United States of America. And right now, it is certainly far too close to try and call anything. Although with the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, we're seeing that they're making some sorts of projections that really don't make much sense. This was the same type of complaint that we had with respect to the primary process, when they would just go out and make all sorts of rather specious claims and hand things to people when there was, less than even half of the percentage of the votes being in. That's just typical. It's your typical nonsense that you see over and over again with these people. But for those who are going to sit there and try and feel excited tonight about a victory of either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, let me explain something. It's not going to do a damn bit of good for this nation. Things are not going to change, and other than getting a little bit worse, because neither one of them espoused the Constitution. You see, when we distance and divorce ourselves from the supreme law of the land, which pursuant to Article 6, Clause 2 of our shared Constitution is none other than that sacred document itself, that is when we continue to have these problems. And unfortunately, that is what is happening in this election cycle. So, irrespective of what happens this evening, irrespective of who claims the lead crown of crap, we are going to suffer as a nation because they do not adhere to the Constitution.
We all lose.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to. We all lose. I've seen on social media, Randy, earlier we talked about this, and one of our mutual acquaintances on social media says, who wins Florida, Trump or Hillary? It doesn't matter. We all lose. Point blank. It's just as you said, they don't follow the Constitution. They have no desire to follow the Constitution. The only thing they want to do, in their pockets, create their own little safe havens and their own little empires and legacies, while throwing everybody else, i.e. we the people, to the wolves.
Mm-hmm.
For what? For their own self-aggrandizement, for their own uplifting and pedestal raising shenanigans? Crap. Screw you. How's that? We all lose. That's just the way it works. We've warned about this time and time again. We warned at the very onset of the beginning of the election cycle how people need to view things, what direction they should take, what direction they're obligated to take as voters, as sovereign citizens. And they rebuked it. They rebuffed it. They threw it off. They didn't want to listen. Well, guess what? You can't blame Randy and I for this. You can't blame our first Air Marshal Nelson Ward. You can't blame our friend Wayne. You can't blame our friend Kev. You can't blame freaking Beacon John Magula for this.
No. The only ones who can be blamed for this are we, those who went along with it, those who bought into this diatribe, this drivel of the lesser of two evils. If you're going to do the lesser of two evils, it's never going to allow the nation to progress past the problems that we have now. It's never going to let the nation be what our founding fathers always originally intended for it to be, and that is a major problem. And of course, what we see is that with this cult of personality, the whole notion of having ideas, the whole idea of being based on the natural law tenets, which are immutable, gets swept by the wayside. And then all of a sudden, all of these penultimate concerns that really shouldn't have any positioning within modern society or within what we view as quintessentially important aspects and critical aspects of the American psyche and character come to the surface. That's when you start to see things like socialism and all of these other ridiculous things begin to come out of the woodwork, because all of a sudden people have lost sight of what our national identity is. And when we lose sight of what our national identity is, that's when we fall for everything that these little charlatans, these hucksters, these liars, these carnival barkers allow to try and bamboozle us. We will fall victim to it each and every time, and that's the problem with Trump. Trump represents the basic loss of originality and the loss of standing for any principles with respect to the gutless opposition party or GOP. Stop and think about it. Because what is it that Trump espouses that aligns with the Constitution? That's something that you have asked repeatedly on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, The Wright Flyer, Jeremy. And it's something that the Lion Branch Trumpidians congregating over there in their Trumpidian tabernacle have never really been able to answer. How it lines up with the Constitution and where it could be found in the Constitution. Aside from Article Non-Section Existent, Clause 0, which is nestled between the Bovine Excrement Clause and the What the Hell Happened Clause.
Again, this falls down to people voting the lesser of two evils or falling into that trap. And it's like the example I gave of an individual walking down a road or traveling down a road and finding themselves lost. They come to a fork in the road. One veers off to the left, one veers off to the right. The left happens to be that of the way of Hillary Clinton, the one off to the right, that of Donald Trump. And people automatically assume when they come to that juncture in their life, well, we don't have any other choice. We're lost. Which way do we go? To the left or to the right? Well, essentially now, at this point in time, that's the only choice you have now, because the votes have been cast or are currently being cast. In some states, those polls don't end until 11 p.m., 12 a.m., and in Hawaii and Alaska, even later than that. But see, you had a choice up until this point. Up until this day, you had a choice. Up until you decided to walk away from that election booth, you had a choice. And go back the other way. You were lost to begin with. You can't do that now. It's like somebody has come in, and I'm going to tell you exactly who it was. It was the Fabian Socialists and their coiffinator have teamed up to put a roadblock behind you so that you can't turn around to go back the other way. They have essentially forced you to make this decision. Either you toe the line or you're going to be the nail that sticks out and gets hammered down. That's what it is boiled down to now. And why has this happened? Because people have distanced themselves and divorced themselves from the fundamental aspects of our natural law system following the Constitution. Period. That's the only way it is. You no longer have that option. People say, well, we have the option going back to the Constitution. Now, if Hillary gets elected, we know it'll be a constitutional uprising. There should have been a constitutional uprising long before we even got to this point with this election cycle. And we had that opportunity. We had that opportunity with any other candidate. One in particular, Ted Cruz. He was the only constitutional candidate running. the only one. And everybody cast him away, cast him aside. And to a certain degree, I can understand Cruz saving face or trying to salvage anything that he has left of conservatism by trying to win over the hearts of people and saying, okay, I'll go along this time to get along, but I'm going to do it for this, whatever his reason is for him voting for Trump or saying he's going to vote for Trump, support Trump. That's between him and God. It's not between us. We can cast aspersions on him. We can do it, but at this point, it doesn't matter because the die's been cast, and now it's set in stone. Our country is screwed. Period.
Mm-hmm. What we're facing is this whole notion of populism. Populism has become a political movement that is new to the map, something that, yes, we've seen it before. Yes, you had that originally in the 1890s with people like, I just drew a blank on his name. Funny that I should do that as I'm just bringing him up. But Williams Jennings Bryan, he was a populist candidate. And again, that was 1896. And it was thought that he would be able to destroy the grand establishment, everything that had this sort of corrupt political patriarchy type system that was oppressing the people. It's the same type of drivel and filth that we have heard reiterated time and time again throughout this disastrous fiasco of a 2016 presidential election cycle. But something that goes deeper with respect to that is this idea that Trump, just as recently as yesterday, was out there singing the praises of populism and how his acolytes within the gutless opposition party, or GOP, have come forth and said that they are the new face of the Republican Party, that conservatism is going to be swept aside in this grand torrent, this cornucopia of garbage that is going to replace conservatism and dyed-in-the-wool constitutional compositionists with populists. Why do we want to accept this thin veneer of populism? Why do we wish to essentially give a voice to this man who, by his own admission, loathes and despises the very things that ever propelled this nation to such lofty heights in her relatively brief yet illustrious history? These are the sorts of dichotomous problems that we are going to have to resolve, and it is going to be exceedingly difficult to resolve them. The reason it's going to be exceedingly difficult to resolve them is, I think, that a vast majority of the Lion Branch Trumpidians are in sheer denial that they are even supporting something that is deleterious to the Constitution. Jeremy, you and I have had conversations off air where we've said that many mutual acquaintances of ours who are firmly in the Trump camp say that they support the Constitution and that they're going for Trump because Trump is the only one that is going to protect the Constitution, or that he is somehow going to protect the Constitution more than Madam Clinton would. It's, again, one of those specious and erroneous arguments that really shouldn't even see the light of day. But that's where we are, right here and right now, as these numbers come in. And I've even got that stupid Fox News channel up. They just called Arkansas for Trump. And so it says Clinton has 97 electoral votes, at least according to their projections, and Trump has 139. They project that Trump wins Kansas, North Dakota, South Dakota, Texas, and Wyoming. So that is kind of interesting how that's playing out. But again, as we have said all throughout this, it doesn't matter who wins tonight, because the real ultimate losers in all of this is none other than we the people, the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours.
See, I have NewYorkTimes.com pulled up, okay? And it's refreshing right now. For some reason, it's just being glitchy, but it's at least showing the numbers for the electoral votes. And here it shows that Hillary Clinton has 68 and Donald Trump
Mhm.
has 69.
Mhm.
So who do we believe? Which numbers are accurate? The ones from, Fox News or the New York Times? I'm willing to bet, Randy, we can go to any other site that's reporting on the live election results in this, and then they're all going to have different numbers. And what it is it's mostly projections. It's what that particular news medium wants the results to be. I'm guessing that's the way it's played. And it was the same thing with the primaries. When we did shows during the primaries and the votes coming in, so on and so forth, we saw the same thing. So this is just yet another example of the disingenuous nature of the reporting mediums. See, that's all part of the problem with this whole electoral process. Not only do we have dysfunctional candidates that have gotten the nominations, but we also have a dysfunctional outlet for, reporting.
Mhm.
The whole plethora of networks are all dysfunctional. Nobody knows for sure what's going on. And I think it, to a certain degree, Randy, this is why we do what we do. And we've established ourselves as the new resistance, especially the new media resistance. Because what our whole goal is, as we stated before, was to bring the facts to individuals, to empower them, to get them to think for themselves, not take what we say for face value, but to look it up, research, and verify it. The whole trust but verify situation. And you can't do that with Fox, because we know Fox is in the tank for one or the other, and both, actually. Same with MSNBC, same with CNN, the whole 9 yards. I mean, we can even look at, Hannity, Rush Limbaugh, and all those others. And yes, I said Rush Limbaugh because apparently his logic is sitting there, as he always is with every single election. He doesn't know which way to go. So, again, as a nation, if we can even call ourselves that after tonight, where do we go from here? What is the solution? How do we fix this? Obviously, the people we elect aren't going to fix it. They have no intentions of fixing it because our nation's screwed. So it reverts right back to we the people, the ultimate wielders of sovereignty. My question to everybody listening and everybody who will eventually listen to this, what are you willing to do? Are you willing to accept your responsibility and your obligation as an ultimate wielder of sovereignty and United States citizen and do the right thing? Be willing to be held accountable for your actions, but also being able to hold others accountable for their actions in a justifiable manner. Are you willing to do that? Are you capable of doing that? I'm not sure. I've talked to several people today, Rainey. In fact, just a little while ago, I came back from a friend's house of ours. I was talking with them, and we walked in. It was his daughter's birthday. We went over there for cake and ice cream and whatnot. And as soon as I walked in the door, he said, he looked at me and he says, our country's screwed. He says, we don't have, he says, who are you going to vote for? He says, are you going to vote for the crook or the crook's biggest donor? He says, either way, you're voting for criminal acts. You're voting for a crook and a criminal. Either way. Whether it's one that funds the criminal activity or one that actually commits the crimes.
Yeah. And what it comes down to is you've got essentially two of the same people running for the office. Again, this is the danger of trying to put it into a cult of personality. And when you asked what it is that we could do as a people and as a nation to essentially get back onto what I refer to as the path to prosperity, to get back to some semblance of normalcy in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, it comes down to this. It's that we have to go back to the Constitution. The Constitution is what guides us. We, the people, have to do that. And again, it falls squarely on our shoulders as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty. By the very design of this nation, going back to its inception some 235 plus years ago, our founding fathers designed it that way because the nation belongs to us. It does not belong to anybody else. It does not belong to Donald Trump. It does not belong to Hillary Rotten Clinton. It belongs to we, the people. That is what we have to get back to. That is the ultimate course for placing this nation back onto the path of prosperity. The problem is we've forgotten it. And you're right, with respect to the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, they have pushed us here. They have placed us here. They have encouraged this sort of divisiveness. They have encouraged American citizen to go after American citizen. And for what? What purpose? Other than to bleed us to the point of anemia, other than to make this nation weaker. That is their ultimate goal. That is what they have been pushing for the past century and a half now. And we have reiterated it time and time again here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. And unfortunately, what we see with all of this is we're stuck with it. There's no way around it.
You know, this, and I think I mentioned this to you yesterday or the day before in a conversation on the phone. I think it was yesterday. What this reminds me of is George H.W. Bush running for his second term. That's who Trump reminds me of. Running for his second term. Remember, read my lips, no new taxes, no this, no that, this isn't going to happen, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. Well, the thing is, George H.W. Bush was a progressive. He never was a conservative. Not once, not ever once. Even as wasn't he vice president under Reagan?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, so even vice president under Reagan, he wasn't a conservative. I mean, even Reagan stepped away from conservatism in his second term. His first term, conservative. Followed the Constitution. Had no problem with it whatsoever. Second term, nah. He bent to the will of people. He was manipulated into doing things because he had good intentions. The problem is, the difference is, with Trump, Trump's idea of good intentions are what's going to benefit Trump, not anybody else. Not anybody else. This whole thing the other night, when this guy supposedly, caused a ruckus and people are saying, oh, this guy, tried to assassinate Trump. It was an assassination attempt, and, Trump was rushed off stage.
The paper-cut assassin. The paper-cut
assassin. The guy holding the sign, real Republicans against Trump, whatever the case it was. I can't remember what it was on the sign, but that offended Trump. So, of course, he saw something like that. Somebody apparently yelled gun, supposedly, which there was no gun there. And instantly, this guy's targeted because he's anti-Trump. Kind of reminds me of the whole, beer house Nazi rallies. Randy, you remember those?
Oh, yeah.
If you were against the Nazi party, guess what? They didn't just, rough you up a little bit. They probably killed you. They drag you out back and you disappear. And that was the onset of it.
Yeah.
So it's the same logic, it's the same attitude, and it's the same demeanor that is being put on people who are anti-Trump. I've been anti-Trump from the onset because I know what he's all about. He's a charlatan. He's a fraud. He cares nothing about the country, only himself. And anyway, he can get above the law and use the law to his own means, even if it means violating the rights of other individuals. The gal whose house he tried to take for his limousine parking garage, in eminent domain and all that stuff. Why are we the people allowing that to even happen?
Well, it's because we have allowed ourselves to be led astray. It's because, again, we go for the shiny object instead of the tried and true things that are with us. And that's all due, thanks in no small part, to the way that the historical revisionists have taken over in our institutions of education from coast to coast and border to border. It's also the way that our information media sources and outlets have fallen under the control of not only the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, but also by the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists. And let's face it, the fact is, with respect to these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists, they are meticulous, they are patient, they are willing to take whatever grueling steps are necessary to fully thrust the United States of America into this dystopia that they wish to transform us into. Here's the question. Where has the Constitution gone in all of the discussions that we've had with respect to the current state of affairs and this electoral process? No one is really discussing the Constitution, save for a few of us. And that is due in no small part to the betrayal that we've had with respect to the so-called right-wing punditry and commentary. You mentioned Rush, as you put it, limbo. I call him Lush Bimbo because he essentially whores himself out for the lowest dollar. That is the type of betrayal we're talking about. That's the reason that we have dubbed this electoral process, this 2016 presidential election cycle, as the election cycle of betrayal. And I can think of no more of an apt term for it. When you see that people are willing to sell their principles and souls to essentially go down to a path to quick victory, selling oneself for 30 pieces of moldy dandruff, there is a major problem and disconnect. Why is it that Roger Stone can go forth onto the InfoWars Morons channel and still speak as though he has any modicum of credibility when he is pushing the alt-right? He has been a nasty prognosticator of the worst sort for, what is it, going on at least 35 years with his interrelationships with Trump. We should have known this. It's not as though this was secretive information that was stashed somewhere that could not be readily discoverable, especially in this fast-paced, modern, internet-connected world and cyber community that we live in today. Look at what social media is able to do. And look at what is capable of coming forth and to fruition when people are not careful and people are not acting with the best intentions. Look at the things like with David Pecker. You know, David Pecker spent $150,000 at the National Enquirer to buy that story about the 1999 centerfold spread Playboy bunny having an affair with Trump after he was married to malaria, and they sat on it. Now, they deny that, but are we to believe that? I don't think so.
Well, again, with finding out information, okay, and with social media and the internet, and as fast as it works and whatnot, I'm not the brightest tool in the shed, okay, but I know where to find the sharpener. And when it comes down to that, Randy, you know how I am. If I'm given a bone, I'm going to dig, and I'm going to dig and dig and dig. And I'll sharpen myself, and I'll hone my skills, and I'll dig even further. Look at all the stuff that we've pulled up with regard to Trump, all the information that supposedly has been hidden. Well, if they really wanted to hide it, or they thought they were hiding it well enough, apparently they didn't, because we found all the connections with the Russian mob, the Russian individuals that actually own the Trump Soho in Florida, but Trump claims it's his property. Well, no, you can walk around and put your name on anything. It doesn't mean that it's yours. See, the true fact about that is those Russian investors that belong to the Russian mob, they're paying Trump a licensing fee to use his name to put on their building that they own so it can bring business to them. He's a brander. Okay, it's kind of like, you know, the gay and lesbian community call heterosexuals breeders. Well, Trump is a brander. That's what he does. He walks around, puts his name on everything, and says, "Yeah, I've made it great. You know, I built the wall, I built the tower. You know, it's this and that. I was able to climb out of the bathtub all by myself, and I even cleaned my rubber ducky."
No, jeez.
Shut up, Trump.
Yeah.
You're a brander. You're a fraud, a charlatan. You're doing everything you can to make a quick buck at other people's expense, including this election cycle. You even said, Trump, that you were going to be the first president that makes money off of being elected.
Yeah, he said that. But
how was that
it's
legal?
Not.
Exactly.
It's not. But he said that back in 2000 when he was, you know, pondering that run too. And if we take just a little trip down memory lane back into the primary process, back when David Dukey first came out and said that he was endorsing or at least tacitly supporting the Donaldoff, we recall that I think it was with Jake Tapper. I believe he was on CNN or Communist News Network. And he tried to play like his earpiece didn't work right. And then, of course, he came up with that rubbish that it was he didn't know who David Dukey was. Well, again, when it comes to the finding and disseminating of information, you go back 16 years ago in 2000 and you find that the Donaldoff had penned an op-ed piece in the New York Times in which he said that the stated reason that he was leaving Ross Perot's Reform Party was because David Dukey was a member. Now, I don't understand how this lie was not exposed in greater detail by other outlets than we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. We were the ones that exposed that because I dug it up. I found it. And again, this should have gotten more traction. Where was Lush Bimbo? Where was Michael Weiner Savage? Where was Sean Wannity? Where was Laura Inkamp? Why were these voices who claim to be fundamental pillars of conservative voice in America, why were they silent? This silence is voluminous and deafening because what it speaks to is just to the great extent and willingness that they were ready to go to in order to abandon the principles that they claim to adhere to, that they claim to advocate for and to promote for decade after successive decade. But when you stop and look at it, when you see the way that the political tea leaves fall, they have betrayed us. Not just us, but the entire movement. They have betrayed the United States. I hate to put it that way, but when you put it in any type of logical and fathomable fashion, that is the way that it turns. That's just the way, as the old adage goes, that the cookie crumbles. Now, they just called Connecticut for Hillary. That's not all that surprising. So it's now supposedly Donald Trump with 139 electoral votes and Clinton with 104. So this race is really beginning to tighten as we thought it would. But again, as we have stated from the outset and from the very beginning of tonight's programming, it simply doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who the Farouk wins this election cycle. We are Farouked. Yeah. Except we're not. The reason we're not is because of our own initiative, our own ability to think and act and work for ourselves.
Well, it's our drive. It's our inner desire to remain free. It's our natural American instinct. Because, see, this nation was faced with adversity numerous times. Go all the way back to 1776. British came, they tried to make slaves of the colonists. They failed. They tried to take their sole means, and contrary to what all these revisionist history books teach, and these leftist, ignoramus, moronic school districts teach. It wasn't the Boston Tea Party that sparked the Revolutionary War. It wasn't the Stamp Act, singularly. What the final catalyst and last straw was when the British told the colonials, you cannot have the means of defending your property in your life.
Mm-hmm.
We will do that for you. Guess what? It's coming again. They tried it again in 1812. And then we had douchebags like Adolf Hitler start World War II, which we got pulled into. Why? Because guess what? We had to go save the limey asses of the Brits for the second time. See, that's what true conservatism and true Americanism is. We kick the crap out of these individuals for trying to take our freedoms and liberties away, but then we turn around and we defend them and we save them.
Mm-hmm.
Trump doesn't know anything about that. Hillary sure as hell doesn't know anything about that. But see, history repeats itself. It has that awful tendency of doing such because people fail to adhere to it. They fail to learn the lessons of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we've warned and we've told everybody. We've told numerous people, thousands of people. This is what's going to happen again. Regardless if Hillary wins, which we projected Hillary to win. We predicted her to win this election.
Mm-hmm.
And even if Donald Trump does win the office of the presidency, guess what? Hillary Clinton still wins. Do you know why? Because Donald Trump is her biggest campaign donor. Donald Trump is one of her best friends. Hillary still wins because I guarantee you Hillary will have an influence in what laws are made, in what executive actions are taken by Trump. She will have an influence on the Supreme Court, just as the same as if Hillary wins, Trump will still have an influence, much like he's had an influence for the past 60 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
His family, anyways, influencing politics. So there really isn't a winner in this election. We all lose.
Of course we all
because
lose.
It's going to be nothing more than the same crap that we've been dealing with for the past 100 years.
Yep. Yeah. And the reason that we're dealing with it and having to overcome it is that the entire edifice of the Republican Party has just fallen through. We see that they go out and they make grandiose promise after grandiose promise, and yet they don't intend to keep it. Think of what they did during the whole thing. It was just that they don't ever commit to anything. It really was something that has led us astray, and I think that the anger truly boils down to that. It's that the American people are looking out their window and they're seeing that the pillars of power and authority are once again letting them down. Because again, we are not putting our faith in ourselves, in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty. Instead, we are placing our faith in false idols. The false idols of government control, the false idols of tyranny. And again, when we go down this reckless path, that is when we begin to encounter problems. That is when the United States of America further distances and divorces itself from the supreme law of the land. And there's a reason why on Twitter we do have that hashtag of 6-2 or fight. That means we either go back to the supreme law of the land as it is charted out in the four corners of our shared United States Constitution, or prepare to fight. Because if we don't fight for our rights, if we don't fight for our fundamental and inalienable God-given liberties, then we are left with nothing. They will be able to dictate and micromanage the facets of our daily lives to the point of where we will be told what we can eat, what we can do, whether we live or die. That is their goal. It is power, corruption, and just this desire for absolute control, cradle to grave control. That is what these hucksters do. And stop and think about it. Whenever you look at the Democrats, it's always that they are going after your fundamental and inalienable rights, whether it's the no fly, no buy, and if you dare mention due process, we cry bill, whether it's their attempts to use global warming to try and go after our property rights, whether it's using their draconian methods of overzealous regulations to throttle the life out of small business, which forms the spine, the inevitable backbone of the American people. That is all part of it. And when you look at Donald Trump, and here's one of the reasons why we keep saying that it doesn't matter who wins this election this evening, he does the same things. He espouses the same things. He goes down this same line of diatribe and filth, and therefore I don't see a difference. I cannot see a reconcilable difference between Donnie and Hilly. They are one in the same.
Well, again, it boils down to, it's like my friend said, you have two choices. You can vote for the crook, or you can vote for the person funding the crook. It's either way. And he says, I'm not going to make that choice. And he said he didn't make that choice. He could not bring himself to vote for Trump or Hillary. He just couldn't do it. He said, I cannot, in good faith and conscience, cast a vote for either one of them. He says, I voted third party. And he says, now I know third party's not going to win because it's not popular to vote third party. But here's the thing. He said something that was very, very profound, and I've been trying to figure out exactly how to say this for a number of years. And it was very simplistic. He says, how do we know a third party's not going to win unless people do vote for them? He says, everybody says the third party can't win. Well, how do you know? Unless you vote for the third party. He says, if everybody came out and voted for the third party because they know Trump is the money bags for criminal activity, and Hillary just happens to be the recipient of those monetary gestures from Trump by way of campaign donations and a whole slew of other things. He says, why do we even have to vote for either? He says, we have an option that's not even involved in them, has no ties to them. If everybody just voted for that third option, it makes the other two irrelevant. And he's absolutely right. He is completely spot on with that. It's kind of like the whole underdog syndrome. You have, let's say you have a football team. You have two running backs, both of which are ball hogs. They fight over who's going to carry the ball. Okay? And then you have the fullback who never gets to touch the ball. But as it turns out, if he's given the ball, he outperforms both of them collectively and scores more touchdowns, gains more yardage because he was given the opportunity. But nobody ever wanted to give the fullback the football. They always wanted to split up the duties between the two-star running backs. See, that's populism at its core. Remember, populism is part of the crux of a popularity contest. It's like high school hijinks. You have your cliques. You're not popular unless you vote for Trump. And if you don't vote for Trump, then automatically you're supporting Hillary. Regardless if you understand the difference between both of them and knowing that evil equals evil, automatically we hear from these Trumpladites, these Trump-tardians, well, if you don't support Trump, then you're helping Hillary win. How is that possible if I'm not even going to cast a vote for Hillary? Well, just using their same logic, okay, well, let's use their logic against them. Well, if you don't vote for Trump, if you don't support Hillary because she's better than Trump, then that's a vote for Trump. But you don't see the Democrats doing that. You don't see the Democrats telling people that don't support Hillary, if you don't support Hillary, then Trump's going to win. They don't say that. They don't need to say that. Instead, they do what they're supposed to do. They try to win over people's minds and hearts to convert them over to voting for Hillary. You have to give the Democrats credit for that.
Yeah, but here's something. It's funny that you mentioned that. When I was going to go pick up dinner last evening, I turned on the local radio here, and they had a Lush Bimbo moment in which Lush Bimbo was sitting there saying that all of these progressive women were very upset about the truth being brought forth in those WikiLeaks email dumps, because it showed that she called them basically cantankerous, that they were these overzealous types, that they were basically just the social justice warriors, all of the stereotypes that literally fit with that type of personality. But he said, we don't, she doesn't have to worry about them not going to the ballot box. She doesn't have to worry about members of their own media stabbing them in the back, or saying that they'll go vote third party, or that they will never support her as it does on our side. They want to win. We don't. Well, no, Rush, it's more than winning. I thought that was part of the whole thing that you preached for 30 some odd years. I mean, he's been on the air almost 30 years now. Mm-hmm. I thought that was the whole premise of your show, going back to your first episode that aired in the late 1980s. But we see that this being the election cycle of betrayal, that you have betrayed that. And it pains me to say that, because when I was in college, I really did enjoy listening to Rush. When I was in college, I thought that Rush had a very good business model. In fact, I thought that it was a great way to move forward. I thought that it needed to be modified a little bit to reach out to the up-and-coming generation, because that's certainly the problem that we're having now, is that these quote-unquote millennials are not finding interest in the conservative movement, because, again, when was the last time that the gutless opposition party, or GOP, ever stood for conservatism? When was the last time that it was actually a movement and not just some gutless opposition party? And so that was why in 2005, my friend Todd Sullivan and I dreamed up this platform of radio aviation excellence, the Wright Flyer, reaching out to the up-and-coming generations, so that there would be a practical voice for constitutional conservatism in the rank and file of the younger generation. If there is one thing that the Republican Party has failed at miserably, it's reaching up to the up-and-coming generation. We have the dead cold hand of the detente wing, the detente era, the Bob Dole's, the old Richard Nixon style of republicanism, basically throttling out conservative youth. They don't want to allow us to have a say, and that's when you can have old fuddy-duddies like Vermont Senator Noiseface Boynme Sanders preach that we're going to give free crap to everybody, and then by giving free crap to everybody, that we're then going to magically have the youth run to them. Well, the youth is sitting there thinking, if we get free equine excrement sandwiches, we'll never go hungry. Mm-hmm. So they fill up on this ideological filth and drivel. But it's not good for the nation. It doesn't propel us anywhere. It doesn't help us. It doesn't advocate for us. If the conservative movement does not begin to reach out to younger generations, and not just younger generations, but to all generations, to all Americans, then it's going to die as a movement.
See, and that's where, again, we come in. Because it's not just what we say. It's not the effort that we put into this. It's not the research that we do. It's not the facts that we bring that people should just listen to. Again, trust but verify. See, we each have an obligation to ourselves, to our country, to our families, to our friends, to each other. To have a fluent working knowledge and understanding of our shared Constitution. After all, the first three words are "we the people." And a lot of individuals would say, well, we the people, that's kind of like, a collective of individuals. And then they start this diatribe about, collectivism, and then collectivism breeds into communism, this and that. So we're really not a constitutional representative republic, but we're more of a closeted communism state. I say, no, we're not. For the simple fact that under a communistic state, you do not have individuality. You do not have individual liberties and freedoms. You do not have the authority to hold people accountable when they violate your rights. When they want to make laws that are in violation of the Constitution, we have the authority to say, no, you're not going to do that. Oh, and by the way, you're no longer going to hold your office of public trust under the United States. Because A, either you're going to be recalled out of office or impeached, or you're just going to be unelected. That's how it works. See, it's power of the people. It's government for the people, of the people, and by the people. Okay?
Screw you, Lincoln.
We, the people. And yeah. Yeah. I was waiting for that. I actually waiting for that. So you kind of like a little bit. But the thing is, and a lot of people would say, well, Abraham Lincoln, speaking of Lincoln, guess what? Lincoln was a tyrant. Lincoln was a tyrant. In fact, the best thing that he ever did with as a president, he took a little bit of time and relaxation and went to a theater and caught a play.
Yeah.
Okay? That was the best thing he ever did. Oh, no, he freed the slaves. No, he didn't. He wasn't even alive when slavery was abolished. Again, going back to this whole revisionist crap. It comes full circle right back. And Randy, I look at you and I as, and I'm going to give this little scenario here. Let's say we're seniors in high school. Okay? The up-and-coming generations. The up-and-coming generations are, let's say, the freshman class. The millennials are the freshman class. Okay?
All right.
It's kind of our job as seniors to welcome them into high school. Sure. Absolutely, because that's part of it. That's part of it. Because
rite of passage.
We just call it's rite of passage. We call it tough love. Because here's the thing, all these millennials out there, oh, I'm gonna vote for Bernie Sanders. Yay, boobies for Bernie. You get all these, millennials, these young 20-something-year-old, 20, 21 years old, first time they're voting in a presidential election and this and that. Listen up, kids. Okay, listen. Take it from, us, all right? We understand why you would think that way. We've encountered individuals that have thought that way for a long time. We grew up with individuals that thought that way. We realize the error of their ways. Now, all you have to do is follow our lead. We're going to pave the road for you. And then eventually we're going to hand off the torch to you in hopes that you can keep it burning bright and keep it moving on. Because it's our obligation to do this for you, but it's also your obligation to accept that responsibility and do it for the next generation. This is what the Constitution talked about, ordaining and establishing this Constitution to ourselves and our posterity. It's not just my offspring and lineage. It's not just Randy's offspring and lineage. It's about every lineage and generation that is to yet be born in this country as citizens and ultimate wielders of sovereignty. We have an obligation, duty, and responsibility to take it from our elders, learn from them, learn what not to do, as it seems in most cases nowadays, and making sure that we do the right thing and we do right by each other. And a lot of people say, well, that's all new hippie, new age, hippie talk. No, it's not. It's called responsibility. And it's called duty. It's called patriotism. It's called constitutionalism. That's what it's all about. That's what we've been railing about and preaching for the better half, or for the better part of a whole year, over a year. And we're going to continue to do this. Don't think for a second, folks, that this election is going to stop us from doing this. In fact, it's just going to embolden us. It's going to make us dig our heels in and do it that much more. So buckle up. Buckle up. Don't mind the turbulence because you haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah, because we will never abandon our principles. We will never turn away from that which is our ideology, that which we have sought to build for 235 years. Again, it's as we have said numerous times on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, that this nation is built upon an ideology that is immutable, those natural law tenets which by their very nature are timeless, meaning they're just as applicable today as they were at the inception of our nation some 235 plus years ago. And here's the thing. Would you rather have a nation in which you are the final arbiter of your own destiny? Would you rather be able to think and to act for yourself without fear of governmental repercussions and reprisals? Or would you rather have the government think for yourself? Stop and think about that for a second. Because if you allow the government to make all of the important decisions for you, if you allow anyone and everyone to think for you, instead of taking the hard steps for yourself, instead of doing what is necessary and proper to propel you into a good and lofty position, to gain for yourself, but also to build upon civic responsibility, then what are you as a human being? You are essentially trouncing that gift of free will. You are essentially trouncing those fundamental characteristics of who we are as a nation and as a people, that of self-responsibility, self-determination, working together with self-accountability to give us a free nation and land. And so when you work to think for yourself, when you work to uplift yourself and to act for yourself and to be an independently minded, sovereign individual and citizen of these United States of America, that's when we are on the path to prosperity. That is when America is great and has always been great. And that's why Jeremy and I have sat here over and over again, almost to the point of ad nauseum, and poked holes in that shallow, hollow, empty, meaningless platitude of a basically just slogan, campaign slogan for the mafioso quafioso, because America never ceased to be great. We still think and act for ourselves, although it does seem to be a bit of a rare trend in modern times. We are seeking to break that. We are seeking to break out of this morass and moreau that we have allowed ourselves to fall into because we don't want to take the intellectually difficult steps of thinking for ourselves. But without pain, there is no true gain, there is no true freedom, there is no true way for the American people to act for themselves. And if we don't act for ourselves, then what in the hell are we doing? What is it that we are building upon here? Look, irrespective of whether Trump or Hillary wins, our foot is still in the door. We are still there. We still have a beautiful framework upon which to build this nation back to prosperity. And that framework, that everything to us is the Constitution. That is what we do. That is who we are. That is what we build upon. But if we keep selling out, if we keep turning our backs on what matters, then it's going to be difficult. Then you're going to see the North Face, boy me Sanders, get me another Thunderboy liquor types take over. And essentially the flying saucer is going to run around, free crap and excrement for everybody. I know what's good. Heart attack, dying, dead. That type of thought, if you can even freaking call that a thought, is not going to build this nation. Freedom, liberty, the natural law tenets, our shared constitution, folks, that is what matters. That is who we are. That is what we build upon. It is not a difficult concept. You don't need a rocket surgeon. You don't need Dr. Ben, get me a new suit, I'm a victim, Carson, to figure this out. Look within yourself, because that is where the answer resides. You are a popular sovereign. And when you safeguard that, when you stand up for our liberties, that is when our nation prospers and excels. Is this really that difficult of a concept?
Well, Randy, what that boils down to is one simple thing. People actually voting their conscience.
No, heaven forbid we boo that.
Well, even still, to this point, see, people could still vote their conscience. Maybe not today, but I think I found a way to get rid of that roadblock that has been put behind everybody on that path that where they've gone down and they've gotten lost. And here it is. Stay vigilant. You may not like the way this election turns out. We certainly don't like the way this election is going to turn out because, as we stated at the onset, everybody loses. But the thing is, without losses, there can really be no winners. Because we may lose today. We may have to endure 4 years of perceived Fabian tactics from Hillary or perceived Fabian tactics from Trump. Either way, it's not who wins this election, but what are we, the people, going to do about it for the next 4 years? That's what it boils down to. So in that 4-year time, people have to become vigilant. They have to become fluent with the Constitution. They have to get in touch with their conscience. Find their good conscience. Because, as Thomas Jefferson said, the only thing that tyranny needs to gain a foothold in this great republic that we have is for people of good conscience to do nothing or to remain silent. I refuse to remain silent. As many of you already know, I am the declarant of war against political correctness and everything that it entails. I don't give a rat's ass what anybody has to say about what I have to say. I really don't. If they don't like what I have to say, don't listen. And if you don't like what I have to say, but you feel compelled to say something about it, please do. I welcome the opportunity. I'm always up for civil discourse. I have no problem with that. Not a problem at all. And that brings me up with something, Randy, that you and I have talked about doing. Folks, we want to hear from you. We want your thoughts on this. This whole electoral process, the whole gamut of everything that we've covered over the past year and 2 months. We want to hear from you. We want your feedback. We want to know where you stand with us. We want to know what your thoughts are. If you have issues with us, let us know. Bring it to our attention. If there's something you come across that maybe we haven't covered, but you want us to cover, or even if you want to have coverage of it yourself, you come across something you think is great, get it to us. In fact, if need be, we will figure out a way to where you can present it. Whether if you put it in a letter to us, we will share your letter. You post comments. We will share your comments. We're not doing this just so that our voices can be heard. We want your voices to be heard as well. And if we can figure out a way, I promise you, we will find a way for your voices to be heard, because they need to be heard. Good, bad, or indifferent, it doesn't matter. If you disagree with us, let us know. If you want to have a debate with us because of certain things we say that you disagree with, fine. You know how to get a hold of us. And if you're not sure how to get a hold of us, as this is your first time listening in and joining us, stay tuned to the end of the program. We'll tell you exactly how to get a hold of us.
Yeah.
We're not hard to find. We made it easy for people to find us because we want your voices to be heard. We want people to hear how empowered you have become.
Mm-hmm. Because it's a free marketplace of ideas. That's what we engage in. That is what the United States of America is about. That is what our free system has always been about. And of course, it is why we come forth to have these programs. Our entire impetus and goal here, folks, is to empower you, to give you the tools necessary to foster that fluent and working knowledge and understanding, not only of our shared United States Constitution, but also your your fundamental and inalienable rights, which were endowed to you by your Creator, who happens to be none other than the God of nature himself. And it's really got to come down to that. It's got to come down into the ability of us to exchange ideas. You see, that's what's beautiful about America. Free speech, freedom of expression, that ties into this notion that we are capable of thinking for ourselves, that we are capable of taking a stated position for ourselves, that we can build upon what we started off with and then have something that's even greater. You cannot deny that that is an amazing and beautiful aspect with respect to our nation. It also explains part of the reason why our Constitution is the longest contiguous or uninterrupted running constitutional document in the entire course and scope of human events. You see, folks, we must stand together to defend our nation against all those forces, those nefarious forces that would do everything in their power to tear us down, that would do everything in their power to force us to live on bended knee to the agent provocateurs of tyranny, despotism, but above all, oppression. But you see, with all of the safe spaces that they're pushing for on the American campuses today, all of this drivel of not being able to tolerate disparate or disagreeing ideas and ideologies, that leads to a power vacuum, for lack of a better term, in which we see that the marketplace of ideas is basically threatened. It is attempted to be thrown out. It is ignored. And where does that get us? What does that do for us? Groupthink, I think, more than anything else, has been the dominant factor of this disastrous fiasco of a 2016 election. You can have those MAGA, make America great again, red hats made in China with smally hands, because that's the group ideology. Or you can have your own special drink with the flying saucer. Now, this is interesting. They just called Virginia for Hillary Clinton. They just called Virginia for Clinton. That now puts it 147 Trump, Clinton 122. Virginia's a big one. Virginia's a very big one. And that hurts. It does hurt. And, of course, why did it go that way? Well, once again, the gutless opposition party, or GOP, by failing to stand for anything, by failing to represent anything, has fallen for everything.
Yeah. And I'm switching back and forth here, and I'm looking at this New York Times one. Again, which numbers do we believe? You know, I'm looking here. It says Virginia hasn't even been called yet. Even though 92% are reporting, but they're saying Hillary won Virginia 47.5% to 47.3%.
God,
So
it's a razor thin margin.
Yes, but they're, you know, say this is live. They have the electoral count at 104 for Hillary Clinton, 137 for Donald Trump. Again, I want to ask the question, why is this even happening like this? Candidates.
Yeah.
Very simple. Fear. Fear is why we have these two candidates. So, see, folks, this is why I brought up when I said we want to hear from you. People need to hear your voices. Now, why would I say that? Why would I bring up fear? Because, see, again, here's the thing. As I stated, I don't care what anybody thinks about what I have to say. If it offends them, I don't care. They do not have the right to not be offended. I'm not going to be silenced, okay? And it's not to say that if people, you know, actually want to think about what I say and then have a response, I'm not saying I don't care about that. I don't care if people don't like what I have to say, or if people say, yeah, well, I just agree with that, and then they don't give any more response other than that. If they're not thinking about having, when they formulate their response to me, I don't care what they have to say, because they're not thinking. When I say things, I want it to invoke thought. I want people to be able to latch onto it and sit and ponder for a second exactly what it is that I'm saying. And I'll give you an example, okay? Last weekend, I think it was last weekend or the weekend before. No, it was the weekend before Halloween. Okay, that Saturday before Halloween. Michigan State football game, okay? Everybody at work, you know, everybody's, you know, big into college sports and this and that. We got Michigan State fans, Michigan fans, Ohio State fans, so on and so forth. And people at work were asking me, you know, who do you got for the game? And my response was Michigan State within 17. And I left it at that. Now, Michigan State lost to Michigan by 9 points. So I was within that 17 margin. See, I said it that way so that they would think. And automatically, it was kind of a social experiment on my part, people automatically thought that I was a Michigan State fan right off the bat. They thought I was calling it for Michigan State by 17 points. In fact, everybody thought that. But then when I explained to them, I said, I just said Michigan State within 9. I said, now, that could have gone, that means they lost by 9 or by 17. That means they could have lost within 17 points, or they could have won within 17 points. It's all in perception on how you convey yourself to people. It's all in perception on what you say, how people take it, and what they think about and how they move with it. This is why I say fear. Do not be afraid to speak. Do not be afraid to challenge individuals. Do not be afraid to disagree with people. Don't be afraid to offend people. In fact, it's your God-given right to offend people. That's what the First Amendment's all about. And if they really want to get offended, just say, yeah, here's the sequel to it, the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
Watch their heads explode. Because, see, it all boils down to, if you let fear dictate your thought process, it's going to dictate your process of being able to verbalize things and be able to freely express your grievances, your issues, or anything else you have going on. Don't be afraid to contact us. Don't be afraid to let us know what you really think of the show. Put some thought into it. Sit and ponder. This is why we say, don't take what we say as set in stone.
Mm-hmm.
Trust but verify. Verify everything we say. And if we make a mistake on something or misspeak on something, bring it to our attention. Please do. Because just like anything else, and Randy and I have this relationship, same with our first Air Marshal Nelson Ward and several of our other friends. If we make a mistake and we all allow each other to make mistakes and we don't correct them, and then come to find out, like if I make a mistake and Randy doesn't correct me, and come to find out that I was wrong, and I was wrong that whole time, and yet he never corrected me, I'm going to be more angry at him for not correcting me than I am at myself for making the mistake. It goes the same for Randy, and vice versa. And with Nelson and our friend Wayne, Kev, all of them. Freaking Beacon Magula. I mean, everybody. This is what we need to do as a people. This is part of being held accountable. If you make a mistake, you have to be willing to be held accountable for it and be able to be willing to be corrected for it.
Right. And you know what that goes to, Jeremy? That goes to it being a community. When I say this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns, what I'm speaking to with respect to community is what a community does. A community helps promote a certain set of values, a certain set of characteristics that defines the nation and the people. That is what we have lost. We don't have a sense of community anymore. And I think that as we go along, as we push ever deeper, that places us in a difficult and precarious position. And the reason that we see things like this 2016 presidential election cycle get so close to the razor's edge, that it gets so close and tight-knit, is because people are looking for messianic figures instead of realizing that it is their duty, obligation, but above all, responsibility in their capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty to propel this nation into the path to prosperity. That's by the very design and nature of our constitutionally endowed federalist representative republic. And unfortunately, we don't hear that discussed. I don't hear Mark Levin discussing that. I don't hear Michael Weena Savage discussing that. I don't even hear Lush Bimbo discussing that. And that's part of the problem with him. The one that comes the closest to it, and even he kind of goes off the edge sometimes, like he was saying that Obama had made him a better man today. I don't know why, Glenn, you said that. That's very bizarre. But whatever floats your boat, he gets close. But I'm not going to say that Obama made me a better man because Obama didn't build that. You know, I'm just going to have to take that one from, remember that from, what was that, 4 years ago now? Yeah, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
2012 election.
Yeah,
you didn't build that. You didn't build that. The janitor built that. Yeah, right. Bovine excrement. Go fly a kite, you jackass.
Right.
But what it shows is we've lost this sight of a greater good in the nation. That is lamentable. That shows me that what we have allowed to happen is these disparate competing factions to come in. We've fallen into the trap that George Washington warned us to avoid in his farewell address. And that is unacceptable as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Again, that's fear-mongering. It's absolute fear-mongering is what it is. As to say, when Obama says, well, you didn't build that, well, what it is that put fear into individuals that wanted to start a small business, but refrained from doing so because they were afraid that they were going to be told, yeah, you didn't build that. You couldn't do that. You didn't do it on your own. So they didn't want to do it. So they had the fear of even starting a business out of being ostracized for it, or penalized and regulated out of existence before they even got started. So when you take fear, okay, see, fear could be a good thing, but it's most certainly a bad thing as well. It could be a good thing if it's utilized properly. If it's utilized in such a way, just like with anything else, to where it does not diminish, deride, or deprive, or infringe upon the rights of other individuals. It's good to have fears about something because it teaches you self-control. It teaches you how to think, how to overcome your adversities, but it also promotes and builds self-esteem within an individual. I have a fear of heights, but see, I've had to overcome it numerous times because of the work I used to do with roofing and siding and construction and stuff like that. Since I'm the one who actually contracted the job or was given the contract to complete the job, I was the boss. I had to take charge and actually conquer my fears of climbing up onto a house, a steep roof, and actually doing the work. Because I made a commitment. Because I gave that homeowner my word when I signed on that contract myself that I would do the work. See, fear makes people do stupid things. But it also brings out the bravest of brave in individuals. So it's all in how you look at it. And when people want to say, that all this fear-mongering that Trump bred into people, well, Hillary's going to stack the Supreme Court. Again, that is a fallaced argument if I've ever heard one, for the simple fact that the Supreme Court's already screwed. Yeah. It's already illegitimate as far as I'm concerned, according to the Constitution. You know why? Because all but one of those individuals, for the most part, even Clarence Thomas has had some questionable opinions, but for the most part, he's the only one that has actually followed the Constitution. Mm-hmm. Scalia and Alito were probably a close second and third. Close between those two, but kind of distant from Clarence Thomas. Why be fearful of the Supreme Court being stacked with Fabianistic, leftist, progressive judges when the vast majority of the court already exists as such?
Yeah.
That means there's no fear there. It's already in existence. It's already been acknowledged. So you just filling the vacated seats that were vacated by pretty much progressive leftist judges for the most part in a lot of rulings, with the exception of Scalia. But how's this going to happen? What are they going to do? Have Ruth Bader Ginsburg step down? She's going to be replaced with another one just like her. It's cookie cutter operation. So they're afraid of it. It makes no sense to me.
They're afraid of the unknown. And the problem is, everything you said there is known. And that's the thing.
Yes.
What we are facing here is a known quantity. It is a quantity that has been with us for generation after successive generation. And again, you have to realize that the natural law tenets will not be so easily defeated. That is something that cannot happen unless we allow that to become the fruition of belief, unless we allow that to come to the forefront and to become the overarching theme, the overarching message, the dominating aspect and characteristic of this nation. But I don't think that the American people are about to allow that to happen. Because, again, when you stop and think about it, it is we the people that are endowed by our Creator, the God of nature himself, with our fundamental and inalienable rights. And those rights allow us to continue to build upon the freedom and liberty-loving land that is our beloved Republican homeland. And I don't mean that as in Republican Party. I mean that as our Republican form of government. And again, it's why we say that it is so disingenuous for people to try and claim that the United States of America is a democracy. The United States of America is not a democracy. Again, this is part of why we go forth and state these things, to empower you. Because part of empowering you is to essentially give you an understanding of what we are so that you can then work to educate fellow citizens. And again, it's all part of that marketplace of ideas, the free exchange and dissemination of ideas. That is what allows a free people to be great. And recall that one of the things that Sam Adams said was that we must be a virtuous republic. And the first step of being a virtuous republic is that the people are well informed about their system of polity, that they understand the inner workings of the issues, but also of what is happening around them. And it's as the great visionary Zygmunt Dobbs warned in his magnus opus of Keynes at Harvard, that if we allow these nefarious forces that are hell-bent on our complete and utter annihilation, both as a nation and as a people, to have their way, then we're going to get caught up just trying to survive.
Mm-hmm.
We can't fall into that trap. We just can't.
Yep. And, I'm clicking back over to this NewYorkTimes.com, and I know that I'm not even going to pay attention to the numbers, but they have these three little meters on here. Win the presidency, popular vote margin, and electoral votes. Now, these meters are kind of like little gauges on your car, speedometers, or whatever.
Right.
And under the win presidency one, it's the needle's actually moved towards the right for Trump, and it's right just about dead smack in the middle of where it says leaning. It goes from left to right on, 180 degrees. It says very likely, likely, leaning, and then toss up right in the middle, and then leaning, likely, and very likely for the other side. So it's leaning towards Trump at this point in time. Margin is leaning towards more so with Clinton, 2.5%, give or take. And then the electoral votes are saying that Trump is looking at to get about 285. Here's the thing, folks. The polls are not even closed on the West Coast yet. We're looking at California as 55 electoral votes. 55. Nevada with 6. Oregon with 7. Washington with 12. Idaho with 4. Utah with 6. Okay, just those 6 states right there. See, Trump can have all the states that he has now.
He'll get Utah, I'm sure of it.
You'll probably get Utah, possibly. But I don't know. Maybe Evan McMullen will get Utah. You never know.
The polls were showing that, but then it kind of backed away from it, unfortunately.
But even if he gets Utah, okay, that's 6 electoral votes. So let's say he maintains what he's looking at, what they're projecting now with Florida, Michigan. They're saying he has essentially locked up 140 electoral votes. They called Texas for him, which I'm not, I'm looking at this and I'm not even seeing how they can even add up all of these electoral votes with the states that they've called for him. Doesn't quite, I don't think, hits 140. Okay. So there's ones that are leaning towards him that he's leading in, and I guess they're projecting eventually for him to get those.
Yeah.
But if you look at the states that Hillary Clinton has, that they've already called for her, the state of New York, 29 electoral votes. They have her projected as the winner of 71%, over 25%. Illinois, 20 electoral votes. Vermont, 3. Massachusetts, 11. Connecticut, 7. New Jersey, 14, another big one. Maryland, 10. Possibly Virginia now. Iowa, Minnesota, Colorado.
Connecticut,
and New Mexico. Folks, if Hillary Clinton takes California and the state of Washington,
it's done.
It's done. Trump can have all the other states that he has now, plus the ones he's possibly going to win. If she takes California and the state of Washington, or even California and let's say Oregon, it's done. California has 55 electoral votes. That would put her at 159 to 140, according to the numbers they have now. And I know those numbers are wrong as far as what the electoral count is.
Mm-hmm.
But again, see, and this is only with, not even 50% of the precincts reporting in most states, especially the western states, Midwest western states. Their polls aren't even closed yet.
And get this, Florida is still too close to call. Florida, yes. That nightmare, the hanging Chad, it's still there.
99% reporting according, and it's less than 100,000 votes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's 135,000 votes.
Yeah, it's insane. It's on the razor's edge. But here's the thing, folks. This is not going to be resolved tonight, and we've reached the point where we need to begin our descent. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is send the flight attendant back to pour you some alcohol, perhaps an extra shot of it after having to go through this ordeal of a presidential election cycle and fiasco. As always, folks, I'm your captain, Randy Wright, and I've been joined on our state-of-the-art radio program by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. Folks, we do want you to participate. We really do. We want you to have a say, because we want to empower you. That's why we invite you to leave questions, comments, or concerns either here at our YouTube page or our Google Plus page or our Facebook page. And you can follow us on Twitter with @RadioAviationEX. One more time, folks, that's @RadioAviationEX. And there you will find the departure board that lists my Twitter account, Jeremy's Twitter account, our Blogspot account where we place all of our audio-only versions of our state-of-the-art radio program, as well as an extra link to the video so that you can watch this and listen to this however you want at your leisure time. And then there is that little thing, that little cafe press account thing. Why don't you tell them about that, Jeremy?
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Folks, with the Cafe Press account, lots of novelties on there to where you can show your support for us, show your support for each other. And you know what, Randy? I'm actually thinking about this. I think that some of our novelties would be quite offensive to other individuals, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely a good thing. Folks, exercise your First Amendment right by donning some of our novelties, our neckties. Show your folks your drinking glasses. You can buy 1, 2, or you can buy a whole set if you like. Get 10 or 12 of them. Make for great party favors, birthday gifts, so on and so forth. And you know what? If the flight attendant just happens to show up to dissuade you from this because she's offended that you're on the Cafe Press account rather than sitting in your seat,
push her out of the
buckled
plane.
in, enjoy, just push her out of the plane.
Push
her out.
It's got to be that way. It always has to be that way. As always, folks, thank you for choosing to fly the right flyer. We'll see you again next time. Do take care.